Most men build businesses that die when they do. Their empires collapse with their last breath, leaving no trace of their power. The problem is simple. They chase profits, not permanence. But Machiavelli reveals a darker truth. If you seek immortality through power, you must think not as a merchant, but as a ruler. Today, I will show you the difference. Listen closely, for here lies the first truth that separates the common merchant from the architect of dynasties. Merchants live to count coins, to measure their worth in ledgers and contracts. They build businesses as men build fragile houses of sand, always at the mercy of the next storm. They believe that success lies in profit, in expansion, in the applause of their contemporaries. But what they do not see, what they cannot see, is that wealth, no matter how vast, is but a fleeting illusion. It vanishes when they vanish. Their coffers are opened, their treasures divided, their empires sold piece by piece until nothing remains but whispers of a fortune long spent. The merchant dies rich, yet powerless. His name is not remembered for command, but for commerce. And what is commerce? It is the art of pleasing others, of selling and bargaining, of depending upon the whims of buyers and markets. A man who lives by trade is always at the mercy of others, never fully the master of his own destiny. This is the folly of merchants. They chase wealth, not power. They mistake coins for crowns and contracts for loyalty. But when the final reckoning comes, wealth cannot raise armies, wealth cannot enforce obedience, wealth cannot inspire fear. Wealth can only be taken, and what can be taken is never truly yours. The leader who aspires to more must reject the path of the merchant. He must ask himself not, how much gold can I amass? But rather, how will I ensure that what I build cannot be torn apart when I am gone? A dynasty is not measured in profits, but in permanence. It is not constructed from coins, but from people. Heirs, allies, soldiers, and loyal men who will defend your name as if it were their own. The merchant thinks in transactions, the leader thinks in generations. And it is this difference that elevates one man to power, while another remains only a rich shadow. Think of history, and you will see countless examples. Men of commerce who built palaces, only to see them abandoned within a single lifetime. Families who gathered fortunes, only to be forgotten within 2 generations. Why? Because they mistook their wealth for security. They did not realize that true security does not rest in gold, but in control. Gold buys comfort. Control buys immortality. A dynasty does not crumble when the market falls, because its foundation is not economic. It is political, it is strategic, it is deeply human. A dynasty ensures that even in death, the will of its founder continues to shape the living. The folly of merchants is their blindness to this truth. They celebrate the temporary, never considering the eternal. They think themselves builders of empires, but their empire is no more than a storehouse of grain. It feeds the present but rots in the future. And when wolves come, as they always do, the grain is stolen, burned, or consumed. The true leader does not store grain, he breeds wolves. He does not hoard gold, he hoards loyalty. He does not seek the applause of the crowd. He seeks their obedience, their memory, their dependence upon his name. That is why merchants fall and dynasties rise. That is why men who count coins die forgotten, while men who count hairs are remembered as rulers. Wealth shines brightly only while it is guarded. The man who believes his gold alone will secure his name is the most foolish of all, for gold is blind, deaf, and mute. It does not remember who possessed it yesterday, and it does not care who will possess it tomorrow. A fortune may dazzle the eyes of the living, but the moment the hand that owns it grows cold, it becomes nothing more than a pile of dust waiting to be scattered. This is why wealth without legacy is nothing. A glittering jewel without a story, a crown without a kingdom, a flame that burns brilliantly but dies without leaving warmth behind. Look at the merchant who measures his greatness by the weight of his treasure. He works endlessly, gathering coin after coin, adding them to his vaults, building towers of silver and gold. Yet when he falls, when time seizes his breath, those towers are not monuments to his glory. They are invitations for vultures. His heirs fight over the pieces. His enemies seize the spoils. His so-called allies abandon him, for their loyalty was never to him. It was to the purse he carried. Without legacy, wealth is no shield. Without legacy, wealth cannot defend the dead. Legacy, however, transforms wealth into permanence. When a leader builds a dynasty, he uses his riches as a weapon, not as a trophy. Gold in his hands becomes something more than currency. It becomes the blood that runs through the veins of his empire. He invests not in mere pleasures, but in structures that endure, alliances that bind, reputations that echo, traditions that lock his name into the memory of generations. Legacy gives wealth a purpose beyond the moment. Wealth alone feeds the body, but legacy feeds the spirit, and spirits endure where bodies perish. Think of the difference. One man dies rich, and his gold is dispersed within a year. Another dies, and his family name still commands armies 2 centuries later. Why? Because the first sought wealth, the second sought legacy. Gold cannot rule men, but memory can. Gold cannot command respect, but reputation can. Gold cannot inspire loyalty, but the myth of a dynasty can make men kneel long after the founder's death. Legacy breathes life into riches, turning them into something untouchable, something eternal. Without it, the greatest fortune is only a feast for scavengers. Consider how fragile gold is when it is not bound by legacy. A kingdom without heirs becomes a carcass devoured by outsiders. A fortune without loyal bloodlines becomes a market sale. Even the richest merchant cannot stop this fate, for wealth obeys no master. It flows from hand to hand, from nation to nation, like water spilling through an open palm. But when wealth is tied to legacy, it is no longer free to drift. It is chained to a name, a bloodline, a structure of power that refuses to die with its founder. The wise leader understands that to build only wealth is to build nothing. The merchant buries himself under coins that will one day be scattered. But the ruler, the one who seeks dynasty, crafts his fortune into iron and stone, into memory and fear. His wealth does not lie silent in vaults, but speaks loudly in the mouths of men who repeat his name. He may be gone, but his wealth, carried through the channel of legacy, continues to command. The man who grasps this truth will see gold not as an end, but as a tool. One piece of the machinery of power that ensures he is never forgotten. Businesses are built upon numbers, upon contracts, upon profit margins that rise and fall with the market's breath. But dynasties are not born from such fragile foundations. Dynasties are constructed as fortresses of power, with loyalty as the walls, fear as the gates, and memory as the unshakable stone. The architecture of power is unlike the architecture of business, for one seeks temporary gain, while the other seeks immortality. A business can collapse in a single bad season. A dynasty endures through centuries of storms because its foundation is not money. It is control. Consider the merchant. He thinks profit is the brick and growth is the mortar. He adds one coin after another, believing he is building strength. Yet, when envy rises against him, when rivals conspire, when time takes him, what remains? His structure collapses because it was never truly fortified. His fortune existed only in the numbers written in his books, and numbers are easily erased. But the leader who builds a dynasty does not build with coins. He builds with men, with systems of loyalty and fear so deeply ingrained that they bind even after his death. This is the true architecture of power, invisible, but indestructible. A dynasty is like a great fortress that cannot be approached without submission. Its foundations are not wealth, but obedience. Its walls are loyalty that has been cultivated through years of reward and punishment. Its towers are the myths and legends whispered about the founder's strength, and its watchmen are heirs, soldiers, and allies who know their survival depends on defending the dynasty's name. Where the merchant sees employees, the ruler sees subjects. Where the merchant negotiates, the ruler commands. The difference is absolute, and the result is eternal. Power is not maintained by kindness, nor is it preserved by generosity. These things win admiration but not endurance. Power rests upon fear balanced with respect, upon systems that make disobedience dangerous and loyalty rewarding. The wise leader designs his dynasty as an architect designs a city. Every street, every tower, every gate placed with purpose. He knows that weakness in one wall invites invasion, that cracks in loyalty invite betrayal. He builds carefully, binding men to his rule not merely with gold, but with dependence, necessity, and the knowledge that his fall would mean their ruin. And here lies the true brilliance of dynastic architecture. It ensures that even in absence, the founder remains present. His laws, his reputation, his myths, these become the very stones of the fortress. Men who never met him still fear his name, still serve his heirs, still obey his structures. This is how power survives the grave. It does not rely on wealth alone, for wealth is liquid and fleeting. It relies on a framework of loyalty, fear, and legacy that no enemy can fully dismantle. That framework is the dynasty itself. The architecture of power requires cunning. To build it, one must understand that generosity without control breeds disobedience, while fear without respect breeds rebellion. Both must be balanced, crafted carefully into the foundation. Like an engineer of empires, the ruler ensures his dynasty rests on such a balance. And once it is built, even death cannot tear it down. For long after the body has turned to dust, the fortress of power remains standing, casting its shadow across generations, reminding all who enter its walls that this was not the work of a merchant, it was the work of a ruler. Machiavelli teaches us that the most fatal error a leader can commit is to build power without securing its transfer. A man may rule with absolute strength, he may command loyalty, he may amass fortune and armies, but if he fails to prepare successors who can carry the weight of his empire, then all his glory dies with him. Power, like a torch, must be passed, and if no one is ready to grasp it, the flame extinguishes, leaving nothing but smoke and ash. This is why dynasties endure where mere businesses perish, because they prepare bloodlines and successors, not just ledgers and managers. The foolish leader hands his wealth and title to heirs who are weak, soft, or untrained. These heirs inherit authority they do not understand, and in their hands, strength becomes weakness, discipline becomes chaos, and fortune becomes plunder. Rivals, once afraid of the founder, rise boldly against the unworthy heir. Allies defect, loyalty dissolves, and the dynasty collapses in shame. History is full of such tragedies. Great rulers whose legacies turn to dust because their successors were children of comfort, not heirs of strength. It is not wealth that ensures continuity, it is preparation. It is not inheritance that secures power, it is discipline. The wise leader understands that heirs must be sharpened like blades. They cannot be raised in luxury and still be expected to wield authority with an iron hand. They must be tested in the fires of difficulty, hardened by challenge, taught strategy, cruelty when necessary, and restraint when essential. For an heir is not simply a child of blood, but a soldier of destiny. If the founder is the architect of power, the heir must be its defender. A dynasty survives not by blood alone, but by blood trained and disciplined to command. Bloodlines matter because they create continuity, a chain unbroken by death. When men see a familiar name, when they recognize a family that has ruled for generations, their loyalty is easier to maintain. But blood without strength is meaningless. If an heir is weak, the chain is broken. If he is incompetent, rivals will tear him apart like wolves feasting on lambs. Therefore, the preparation of heirs is not an afterthought. It is the very heart of building a dynasty. The ruler must craft successors who embody his will, who extend his strategies beyond the grave, who are feared not because of inheritance but because of their own strength. But what of those who have no blood heirs? Machiavelli would say, then create them. Adopt loyal men into your line, elevate disciples into heirs, choose successors who carry not your name, but your vision. For the true bloodline of a dynasty is not merely flesh, but loyalty to an idea, a reputation, a myth. Whether by birth or by selection, the ruler ensures that his work does not end when his life does. His successors, chosen or born, must be capable of carrying forward the machinery of power he designed. Without them, the dynasty dies the moment he does. With them, his dynasty becomes immortal. This is the law of succession. Wealth can be stolen, land can be seized, power can be challenged. But a loyal heir, trained and prepared, ensures that all challenges are met with the same ruthlessness as the founder himself. Men may rejoice at the death of a ruler, but their joy turns to despair when they find his successor just as cunning, just as disciplined, just as unyielding. This is how dynasties endure, not by accident, not by hope, but by deliberate preparation of heirs who are worthy of their inheritance. A business may thrive or perish depending on profit, but a dynasty stands or falls upon its reputation. Reputation is the unseen fortress, the invisible crown, the echo that shapes men's obedience long after fear has faded and riches have shifted hands. Gold can be stolen, armies can be defeated, but reputation, once it is carved deep into the minds of men, becomes a weapon sharper than any sword. This is why every true leader understands that reputation is not an ornament, but the very foundation of enduring power. Consider the man who pursues only wealth. He buys his pleasures, he gathers followers who seek his coin, and he calls this loyalty. Yet when his wealth falters, when the gold runs dry, those same followers abandon him like rats fleeing a sinking ship. His reputation was tied only to his fortune, and so, when the fortune disappears, so does his influence. Such a man may be called rich in life, but he dies nameless, powerless, forgotten. Now consider the man who builds reputation. His enemies may conspire, his coffers may empty, but his name still commands fear, still demands respect. Men follow him not because he pays them, but because they cannot ignore him. His presence is myth, his absence still a force. That is the difference between wealth and reputation. One ends when the vault is emptied, the other endures when the body is buried. Reputation is crafted deliberately, not accidentally. The wise leader knows when to be merciful to appear generous, and when to be ruthless to appear unyielding. He does not seek love for its own sake, but he understands the usefulness of being admired. He does not fear hatred, for fear binds stronger than affection, but he ensures his hatred is always mingled with respect, never with contempt. To be hated and despised is fatal, but to be hated and feared is a fortress none dare storm. The construction of reputation is the art of balance, the careful manipulation of how others perceive you. And once perception becomes legend, it lives longer than truth itself. Reputation can turn weakness into strength. A ruler who is believed to be invincible need not fight as many battles, for men already fear the outcome. A leader whose cruelty is legendary may rarely need to enforce it, for the threat alone maintains obedience. Reputation multiplies power because it allows influence without effort. It turns words into commands, silence into warnings, presence into pressure. Where gold buys temporary loyalty, reputation forges chains that bind generations. This is why dynasties endure, because their names, spoken aloud, carry more weight than armies marching in formation. Think of the great families of history. Many lost fortunes, many lost battles, yet their names continue to rule minds long after their material strength had weakened. Why? Because their reputation was greater than their wealth, greater than their armies. Men obeyed not the man before them, but the myth behind the name. To build such a reputation requires sacrifice. It demands consistency in image, cunning in action, and an unrelenting awareness that every choice is a brick in the fortress of memory. A single act of weakness, if left unchecked, can stain decades of strength. A single betrayal, if unanswered, can invite ruin. Thus, the wise leader protects his reputation with the same vigilance as a king guards his throne. The merchant thinks reputation is advertisement. The ruler knows it is the foundation of empire. Without it, loyalty dissolves, fear evaporates, memory fades. With it, even when wealth is plundered and heirs are challenged, the dynasty continues to command. Reputation makes the dead speak louder than the living. It ensures that a leader's shadow looms larger than his body ever did. It transforms his name into law, his myth into authority, his memory into obedience. This is why reputation must be built with greater care than castles, for castles crumble. But a reputation, once carved deep into the minds of men, becomes eternal stone. The merchant dreams of comfort, but the ruler dreams of eternity. This is the dividing line between those who build businesses and those who build dynasties. A business provides wealth, convenience, a life of pleasure, but a dynasty offers immortality, and immortality has always been the true prize of power. The eternal law of power is this: men are remembered not for what they owned, but for what they controlled. Gold fades, palaces crumble, but the echo of command can live forever in the minds of men. The man who lives only for comfort, for riches, for an easy life, has already surrendered to mortality. He has accepted that his influence ends with his heartbeat, that his death is the death of his work. This man is a slave to the present. He seeks praise in his lifetime, but leaves nothing behind. Yet the man who seeks dynasty scorns comfort. He does not labor to be happy. He labors to be eternal. He understands that the measure of greatness is not found in luxuries, but in permanence, and permanence is achieved only through power that survives death. Consider how men speak of history's rulers. They do not ask what food they ate, what robes they wore, or what coin they spent. They ask how they ruled, what they conquered, whose loyalty they commanded, whose fear they inspired. Their names endure because their power outlived their flesh. This is the eternal law of power. Comfort dies with the body, but legacy lives with the dynasty. The man who chooses power over pleasure becomes larger than himself, a figure whose shadow darkens generations. This law demands sacrifice. To build dynasty, one must be willing to deny oneself the ease that merchants seek. One must replace comfort with vigilance, pleasure with strategy, luxury with control. It is not an easy path. It is a lonely one, for those who pursue eternity must think in centuries while others think in days. But the reward is greater than gold, greater than titles, greater than crowns. It is the fear and respect that linger even after death. It is the whisper of your name in the mouths of men who never met you, but who still obey you because of the dynasty you forged. Dynasties are proof that the eternal law is real. They exist